Hello. So in this video, we're going to talk about Adam Shankman's Hairspray. Yes, this is based on a previous stage musical, based on an earlier film version, but we're going to talk about the 2007 version directed by Adam Shankman and starring people like Christopher Walken, John Travolta, Michelle Pfeiffer, Zac Efron, Amanda Bynes, people like this. Star-studded cast. So this is an interesting musical set in the early 60s in Baltimore, Maryland. The story of a larger than is socially preferred young lady named Tracy Turnblatt, whose big dream in life is to get on the Corky Collins show, which is basically a sort of dance program where local teenagers dance to the hip music of the day. The Corky Collins show has fairly stringent physical appearance requirements, which Tracy does not meet despite her enthusiasm for dance. It is also a racially segregated show. This is the early 60s in Baltimore, by the way. So it's a racially segregated show. They do once a month have Negro Day, where African-American teenagers and an African-American host, Motormouth Maybelle, played by Queen Latifah, get to come on and do the dances of the African-American urban community in Baltimore. So this is sort of the setup. This is an overcoming social obstacles story, right? This is overcoming prejudice against people who are overweight, as well as overcoming racial prejudice. These are really, really central, and a lot of the forward motion of the movie is driven by Tracy's sort of naive optimism. And she does at one point actually say to her dad, after a particularly sort of low moment, she sort of acknowledges that she had thought that people would just sort of naturally be nice to one another. People would naturally sort of accept one another once they found out that these other human beings are legitimate human beings and interesting people with skills, value, knowledge, etc., etc. And she says, I think if anything is going to change, that people like me are going to have to fight for it. So this is the interesting sort of tension of the movie, because ultimately we get the sense that things do change. And of course, the impression from the perspective of 2007, when this movie had come out, is that, yes, things did change. Civil rights were not necessarily entirely achieved, but major progress had been made at the very least. But in the context of the film, the actual struggle for civil rights is kind of a side component. What I mean by that is there is a civil rights march when let's be honest, the bitchy station manager, played by Michelle Pfeiffer, cancels Negro Day because she just hates the idea of any sort of integration. So when she does this, the African-American community does march on the station. They protest. There's a great sort of protest march song sung primarily by Queen Latifah. And it's good. It's fine. It's good civil rights type stuff, but it doesn't really do anything. I mean, there's no actual result that seems to be tied to this protest. What we get at the end of, and actually interestingly enough, we have that great thing where this is the all cops are bastards thing, where Tracy sort of taps a police sergeant on the back of the head with her picket sign after he turns his back on her. At which point he's like, you just assaulted a police officer. Now I'm going to arrest everybody. And then the news sort of amplifies this over and over. Like, we hear several instances of news stories about this, and they sort of go from she severely bludgeoned him to, like, she attacked him with a crowbar and left him in critical condition and all this complete bullshit. But it is exactly how police operate. Even today, police will, and I don't want to go too far into the police thing. Suffice it to say, police are trained to lie about stuff in order to make their own violent actions seem justified. That's all I'm going to say about it. Don't comment in response to this. You know it's true. Shut the fuck up if you don't believe it. Anyway, so the upshot of this is that the protest kind of does nothing in the sort of teleological scheme of the movie, because Negro Day is still canceled. Nothing really happens. The station manager doesn't have a change of heart. The protest just is dropped. The only upshot of the protest is that Tracy Turnblad is now wanted by the police for assaulting an officer. And that's important. Keep that in mind, because I'm going to come back to that. But ultimately, the resolution of the movie, the happy ending of the movie, is kind of just that it happens. Corky Collins unilaterally, so like Tracy, so there's the big Miss Teen Hairspray pageant at the end of the show. That's what everything has been sort of building up to. Tracy's trying to win it. This other girl is trying to win it. Theoretically, all the other girls in the Corky Collins show are trying to win it as well, but we get the sense that none of them are ever serious contenders. So it's Tracy versus this other girl, the blonde popular chick who's the daughter of the station manager. Tracy manages to get herself smuggled into the thing. All of the African-American teens get into the station by disguising themselves as janitors and stuff. And basically, they sort of take over the Miss Teen Hairspray pageant because Corky Collins is about to announce the winner when, from out of a rocket ship being lowered down, which they somehow secretly set up without anybody noticing, Tracy Turnblad, from out of nowhere, enter player 2. And she dances, and everybody's like, what? It's amazing. And then another girl comes on, little Inez, who is an African-American dancer, the daughter of Motormouth Maybell, who had always wanted to dance on the Corky Collins show, but never got the chance because she wasn't old enough to be on for Negro Day, and then Negro Day was canceled. So we got all that. So little Inez comes on. Flood of phone calls comes in, voting for the new winner of the Miss Teen Hairspray pageant, and it's little Inez. And so Corky Collins, unilaterally, against both the stage manager and the station sponsor's wishes, is like, I declare the Corky Collins show integrated. It really is that. Like, it is not a people like me have to go out and fight for it. This is an endorsement of the civil rights movement. We actually need forward progress through collective social action. Anything like this, it really does end up coming down to just Corky Collins, a white privileged dude who runs this show and is the face of this popular show, says, I give this to you. I give you integration. And that's all there is to it. So in that sense, it's really kind of problematic as a civil rights movie, because while it gestures toward what was actually involved in civil rights, what we get, what the movie actually tells us is civil rights comes from a white man benevolently giving it to you when you prove your worth. And that's really problematic as a message of the film. There's also a bunch of unresolved plot holes, huge unresolved plot holes, mostly involving legal trouble. The biggest and most glaring one is that Tracy Turnblad is wanted by the police on incredibly trumped up charges of assaulting a police officer. And that just disappears, I guess. The movie never does anything to deal with that. It literally is just forgotten in the happy ending of the film. Like, it legitimately is. No one ever comes to arrest Tracy in this film, even though participating in this dance pageant and actually not winning even would not in any way absolve her of the charge of assaulting a police officer. And the fact that it's a bullshit charge also almost certainly would not really absolve her either. So that's a problem with the film. The structure of the film, it just drops this thing that is a major plot element that sets up the way the climax of the film works. Further, Tracy's best friend, Penny, has an incredibly strict Christian mother who is also very racist. And she has basically like confined Penny to her room, tied her up with a jump rope, etc., etc. She has locked Tracy in their bomb shelter, waiting for the police to come and get her. And the African-American teen, whose name escapes me at the moment, it'll come back to me in just a minute. But the African-American teen, who's the love interest of Penny, who's white, by the way, again, early 60s Baltimore, this is not going to go well for them. This guy comes into her room, cuts the jump rope that is tying her to the bed, and they run off, freeing Tracy in the process. And all of on the day of a civil rights march in which an officer was assaulted, you have just a group of African-American teens driving around a predominantly white neighborhood, and the police officer who sort of stops them is just like, yeah, that seems fine. No, that's not the early 60s. That's not how that shit worked. That guy would be taking them in. But anyway, that's the more minor of the issues. The more major of the issues is they have kidnapped Penny. Penny is under 18. She, like Tracy, is in high school. They have come into her house, taken her out of that house against her mother's express wishes. Now, there's an argument to be made that tying your child to the bed is child abuse, and I would tend to lean toward that argument. But that does not change the fact that this group of African-American teenagers, led by the love interest, as well as Tracy being involved in this, that they have legally, I think, kidnapped Penny. And again, that is an issue that is never addressed at the end of the movie. Penny's mother does not seem like the type of person who would drop charges just because this thing has made her daughter happy. So we've got these big glaring plot holes at the end of the movie where everybody is in legal trouble, and that is just sort of ignored because they have done the right thing from our perspective. It's a huge, bizarre, lazy ending to the movie that leaves these massive issues undealt with. And again, we've got that major problematic element where civil rights, equality, freedom, respect, whatever it is handed to the African-American community by a white man, rather than actually being the result of collective struggle.